Hi, everyone, and welcome to Target Practice, a podcast about great managers, data, and how they make decisions. I'm Nir Gerson, CEO of Target Board AI, and with me today, I have Laura Remaker. Laura and I worked at Get a Car a few years ago, where she was VP of HR. It was an absolute pleasure working with her. And after many years working as an HR executive in the tech industry, Laura today has founded a very successful HR services company. So, Laura, it's great having you here.
Great to be here, Lear. It's nice to see you.
I also want to congratulate you for being the first female executive on our show. And for those of you who don't know, we are recording today from Israel, where Operation Epic Fury is going on. And if you hear any sirens, just don't worry about it. So, Laura, you've been in tech for a very long time. You had massive achievements. Which one would you say was your proudest moment?
Yeah, honestly, my proudest moment has been starting my own business. It was not something I ever expected to do. And, when we were wrapping up at Get a Car, I decided to go fractional just because I wanted to spend more time with my kids. So that was my main motivation. And interestingly, it just started to grow. Each year we acquired more clients and whatever else. And now I'm super proud to say that I'm a business owner. I have employees. I have 11 employees. We have several clients, and it's something I'd never expected, but I'm so excited to have it.
It's a huge thing, moving from working for somebody to owning your own business.
Absolutely.
Now, what would you say was like a lower point in your career, something that you felt didn't turn out as well as you'd hoped?
Yeah, I think about this a lot because there's 2 years ago, if you had asked me what my regrets are, I could have listed 20 of them and walked you through every single one, each mistake, what I would have done differently. And I'm definitely going to go through some of them too. But I've hit this point in my life and in my career where I'm glad to have had them. And I feel like I wouldn't be where I'm at if I didn't have them. So when I go back and I think about regrets and mistakes, I'm almost happy that they happened. But obviously where you and I worked, it was the startup that I was at that was not successful, which was unfortunate, but I also feel like it was the place that I learned the most and truly worked with the most talented people. But I do, I go back to that place and I do, kind of think of things I would have done differently. And I could list probably 10 different things. But what I will share is I'll share a personal one because this is something that I share with a lot of people now as an HR executive fractionally at different startups. So I actually put in my own money into Get a Car, and invested my own money. And I had done that before at other startups that it had always paid off. So, I felt like it was part of, being loyal and whatever else. And I was happy to do it. And, we all know it's always a risk, right? So, so I did that at Get a Car. And I was also an admin in Carta, which is basically the equity platform that we use. And I had noticed that like a financial advisor had bought had all of his vested options. And I was like, should I do that? Right. So I talked to our head of finance at the time and I was like, well, why would someone do that? Does it make sense? And he's like, yeah, like here's like the tax benefits and whatever else. So then I bought all of my vested options too. So now not only had I put in like kind of like my liquid money, I had also bought a bunch of my vested options. And for anybody that doesn't know, unfortunately, Get a Car went out of business. I got back 6% of what I had put in terms of like total cash, which was rough, and it was a lot of money for me. And, would I do it again? No, I certainly wouldn't. But also now all the time I get asked questions about equity. Hey, Carta says that I can buy this. Should I buy this? Whatever else. When I talk to employees, of course, I start with the standard HR, hey, I can't give you any financial advice, yada, yada, yada. And then I tell them the story and I say, so listen, you should talk to somebody that you trust. You should figure it out, but like, don't necessarily buy them because, Carta's giving you a prompt and you think it's a good idea. Be thoughtful about it. So yeah. So, when it comes to kind of like a personal business regret, that's definitely one of them. But at the end of the day, I'm able to give people a lot of, kind of feedback on it from a personal experience and hopefully change what they might do.
I have a very similar story, which I won't share now, but I will
Yeah,
say that Get a Car was very close to being a big success. I think
it was.
it
Yep.
was a toss of a coin.
Hmm.
And well, thanks for sharing that. So, Laura, what would be an instance where you felt that having the right data made a big impact on a decision that you've made?
Yeah, and I would say this is something that I could say 100 times: compensation data. So compensation is such an emotional thing, and it's emotional for founders, CEOs, the people that are making the decisions, and it's emotional for the person that is working there. And I've encountered a lot of founders that have this feeling of like, this is my money and I'm giving you this. Why aren't you grateful? And employees that are, hey, I worked really hard with this low base salary, but you gave me a lot of equity. And now we got, an investment and I'd like to see my base increase. And it becomes such a point of contention because people are so focused on, value when it comes to comp, and their own personal emotions get tied into it. And it's really hard for them to see past it. And I can say all day long, here's what I think, here's my advice. But what is really helpful for me to lean on is really strong compensation data. So when I talk to, HR executives and they're, what type of data should I buy? Should I get this? That is one thing that I will always pay for, is compensation data, because it's invaluable for situations like that. And it gives both parties a perspective. I mean, it can at least lessen the emotions that surround compensation decisions.
Amazing. And what's the situation where you felt that, you had to make a big decision, time was, there was time pressure, and you
Hmm.
didn't have the right data to make that decision?
Yeah. Yeah. So, again, there's a lot of situations that you encounter like this. And typically where I'm at, like, it's always going to be an employee decision in terms of what you're doing, and when it comes to compensation, I can use a specific example because I'm happy to do that. What I tend to do is do it in a way where it's something that is fair and in between, and also give the employee kind of like a guarantee of, if you do X, Y, and Z, we'll get you to here. Because a lot of times, what happens in startups is there's so much ambiguity in terms of, will we do performance reviews? Will there be compensation increases? Is there a timeline? Will I get X, Y, Z? I know this is, something that could happen maybe someday. And when it comes to a situation like that, I do what I can to get the employee into a place where they feel good, even if it's not close to where they are. And then some kind of actual concrete, we decided on this, so that, they're in a spot where they at least know, if they do certain things, if they're here for a certain amount of time, whatever those things are, that they are going to get closer to the compensation that they're looking for.
Okay. It takes me back to COVID
Yeah.
and the situation there where we had to sort of decide what to do, with the team, with the people,
Yeah.
we weren't able to conduct any business, and we had to let, like, most of the team out for a furlough. And, being a startup, that was super risky at that time. There was no data, no historic
None.
reference for that
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
Um, and actually turned out pretty well, I think, for
It did.
overall.
It really did. You go back to COVID and you think of all the things. And that is one situation that I think, for people in my field, really separated, kind of the HR all stars from the folks that maybe weren't, because you're right. We had, eh, you depended on how much influence you had on how strong your voice was, within the executive team, because a lot of times, unfortunately, HR folks don't have as much of a voice as they could or should. And then it came down to doing what was best to preserve the business and hope that you could support the employees in the process. But yeah, it was tough. It was really tough. But I agree with you. I think, if we did go back to that, I don't know that I would do anything different. I think we made the right call.
Okay. So let's talk about AI and AI within HR.
Yeah.
What's your take? What are you seeing that's interesting?
The AI is incredibly helpful for HR professionals when it comes to writing handbooks, doing compliance stuff, like all of that. Where do I hate it? I can tell you, is performance reviews. I used to be the biggest champion of the written performance review, where I was just like, this is so important. People hold on to these, and it was such a good measure for me as an HR professional to see, what was the communication between the manager and the employee? Like, the manager tells me they're saying these things. Were they really saying these things? Are they showing up in the performance review? And it was just, to me, it was a very, very important thing that happened for employees and for the business. And now, not only do people use like ChatGPT and like whatever else to actually do the writing, in the performance review systems, they have an AI writer for you. So you just, you put in the stuff, you click on it, it comes up, and it's not the manager's voice. It sounds scripted. And I I'm at a point, honestly, where I think I might be anti the written performance review at this point, and more down the path of like more verbal communication. Just and verbal communication is important. I like the performance review to have some controls. Now, to me, like I just want people to say things in their own voice. So that's a space where the AI pieces, for me, I think it takes away from the experience for both the manager and the employee, um, even if it feels easier in the moment.
I hear you. It's funny, I just came off a call with
Mhm.
the senior director of a US based company who told me that one of his colleagues had one of his team members write
Mhm.
an app, not an app, sorry, write an agent to replace him, but without talking to him or voicing any
Right.
complaints. So he said he feels that is helping people talk less to one another. Yeah. Okay. Last question for today. Secret sauce. What would be a
Uh-huh.
metric that
Okay.
you would advise other VPHRs to track?
Okay. Cool. So honestly, I think one of the most important metrics is one that nobody seems to really focus on. There's so much focus on, hiring quickly, like how fast we can get somebody in the door, how we're compensating them, whatever else. Nobody focuses on how long it takes to ramp an employee so that they are fully functional. And that, and there's just not enough attention on it. So you can bring somebody in the door in 4 to 6 weeks, and then if it takes them 6 months to actually be fully ramped for their job, like what was the point of hiring so fast? So I really think it's important for HR leaders to focus earlier on new hire ramp, because if you can get people working and up to speed faster, it makes a real difference. And the founders, like CEOs, like whatever, they're not focused on that. They don't care about it, and they should.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for today. Laura, thank you. It's
That was
been
quick.
such a pleasure having you here. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review. And I
I
hope
will.
to see you all next time.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thanks, Leeward.